and your daughter. And how did you escape from the fire?
That, Mem Sahib, is another story.
Next Wednesday at 5:15, Burt Lancaster leads 9 legionnaires up the desert path during a light-hearted adventure. 10 tall men.
Join Michael Ball as he brings you the best musical talent with the godfather of blues, Ray Charles. And Gloucester's finest, Wet, Wet, Wet. Join Michael Ball, Thursday at 8:30 on ITV.
Next tonight, the Channel 4 News.
Do you ever find your horizons a little limited? That there's a world out there you just haven't discovered? Channel 4 offers a season of films that will open your eyes. Venezuela, past and present. The solitary lives of Indian widows. The German war factories that are surrendering their ghosts. And to start the series, the golf course that took 2,500 Canadian troops to win back from a handful of Mohawks. Global image, if you want to see further than the end of your garden.
I hear you have those new Milky Bar Ice Creams.
Yup.
Yeah, and I hear they're free to the Milky Bar Kid.
Yup.
Well, I'm the Milky Bar Kid.
Nope. Next!
Hello, I believe you have those new Milky Bar Ice Cream.
Next!
Oh.
Next! The Milky Bar ice creams are on me!
You know, I can still remember the very first sweets given to me by my grandfather. They were Werther's original, and I was poor. I had a bit of trouble opening that shiny golden wrapper, but then, well, I'll never forget that first taste. Sweet and creamy and uncommonly good. I remember feeling I must be someone very special when my granddad gave me his wonderful butter candy. Well, now I'm the granddad. And what else would I give my little grandson but my Werther's original? After all, he's someone very special too, you know.
Yes, Martin, it's a tracksuit.
I can see that, Dad, but what's it doing on you?
It's part of my new, healthier lifestyle. First step, Kellogg's Bran Flakes.
Kellogg's Bran Flakes?
Yeah, they're high in fibre, low in fat.
They taste great. So this new lifestyle of yours means that as well as eating Kellogg's Bran Flakes, you'll be jogging to the newsagents every day?
Yep. Well, one step at a time, Martin.
Kellogg's Bran Flakes, a step in the right direction.
Today, he forgot all about cleaning the kitchen. But he remembered a joke about 2 armadillos in a sauna. He clean forgot the smooth power of Jif cream, but he remembered a certain evening on Lindos with someone called Lisa. In fact, in order to go on remembering it, he forgot about cleaning the bathroom too, at least until Lisa came home. Forget cleaning. Remember Jif.
Have you ever noticed how the rich take risks with everything? Except their money? And did you know that Cheltenham and Gloucester is Britain's 6th largest and most cost-efficient national building society? The rich do.
I'm not swapping seats. Really?
Kids will do anything for the taste of Dairylea.
Buster, would you say that the Rover Metro is a delight to drive? Would you say that the Rover Metro is a well-equipped car? Finally, Buster, can you think of any other car that's more fun than a Rover Metro? Well, Buster? So there you have it in Buster Keaton's own words. But find out for yourself how much fun the Rover Metro is. Phone this number for a test drive.
Today is the 4th day of the Tour de France. The riders are out in team time trial formation. Will Miguel Indurain regain the lead? Find out tonight with us here on Channel 4 at 8:30.
This man's daughter has been kidnapped. She was mistaken for the daughter of the Czech president. This man has made contact with the terrorists. They are prepared to deal. A daughter for a daughter. The dramatic conclusion of an exchange of fire, tonight at 10 on Channel 4.
And just before that at 9, an insight into the new spectrum of politics emerging in the Soviet Union. Hello, do you hear us? Now the Channel 4 news, presented by Jon Snow with Zainab Badawi.
The Home Secretary under fire for deporting a man to Northern Ireland after all charges against him were dropped. Good evening. 2 weeks ago, the prosecution said they had forensic evidence linking John Matthews with a taxi bombing in Downing Street. Yesterday, the magistrate in the case lambasted them for failing to produce any evidence against him after keeping him locked up for 10 weeks. Today, the Home Secretary deported him to Northern Ireland. A former Northern Ireland minister says he's yet another victim of the IRA and now a marked man. Tonight, is the Prevention of Terrorism Act doing more harm than good? The Home Office is also under fire tonight over the Derek Bentley case after a judge declares that an injustice was done. Also tonight, the leaders of the most industrialized nations finally manage a breakthrough on the GATT World Trade negotiations. As relief supplies begin to run out in Bosnia, what little is left comes under dangerous pressure from refugees. John Smith sticks to one member, one vote as the country's biggest union mobilizes to vote against him in the autumn. And has America brought international terrorism to its own doorstep by nurturing the wrong forces abroad? John Matthews, the man who was accused of being an IRA bomber but whose case was dismissed yesterday, was flown back to Northern Ireland today, escorted by Home Office officials. The exclusion order on Mr. Matthews, a Belfast University graduate who was born in Liverpool, has provoked widespread protest. The Irish government will seek an explanation at tomorrow's session of the Anglo-Irish Conference. The Labour Party's Northern Ireland spokesman, Roger Stott, has also demanded a review. He said the case amounted to an abuse of the legal system. The Home Office declined to comment. Jane Bennett-Powell reports now on the exclusion order and on the controversy surrounding it.
By mid-afternoon, John Matthews was in Belfast, escorted on a scheduled flight by Home Office officials and met by police. He was taken from Aldergrove Airport and is now free to appeal against his exclusion from the mainland. He can be seen here with red hair and small build in the back of the van. As he arrived at his family's home in Londonderry, he maintained his innocence.
I like to state that I was innocent when I was arrested, I was innocent when I was charged, and I'm still innocent. Everybody knows that, including the British police. When I was being questioned in Rochester Road Police Station, the police says to me, we know you done plant this bomb. I was just an unfortunate Irishman who was arrested, and I didn't even fit the description, but that doesn't matter. They interfered with witnesses, they were out of the way, they banned the facts, they fit the case.
Today's was a journey he'd wanted to make 10 weeks ago for his postgraduate study in Northern Ireland, where he'd done his first degree. He was born in Liverpool. But hours after the City of London bombings, he was arrested at Heathrow, charged later with ordering a taxi to take a bomb to Downing Street. Thames Magistrates Court yesterday was told his character was upright and his family were respected, and that the Crown Prosecution Service had no evidence to offer, despite earlier assertions that the material against him was strong. But as MPs and his father expressed their delight he was free, he was being re-arrested under the Prevention of Terrorism Act and taken to Paddington Green High Security Police Station to await an exclusion order from the Home Secretary. The Home Office has declined to comment, other than to say that the information available to the Home Secretary, such as from security sources, both justifies the exclusion order and prevents him from elaborating. But there's concern among civil liberties campaigners, as well as his family, that Mr. Matthews, freed by the courts, is now exiled by a government minister without saying why.
He should say what that evidence is, and he should prepare to have that evidence challenged if the person so accused is able to challenge it. It is completely wrong and a reversal of every principle of justice that we've developed over hundreds of years in our society for the government to be able to accuse someone of a crime and effectively convict them themselves without that person ever having the opportunity to challenge the terms of that conviction and that sentence. That seems to me a totally outrageous breach of any principle of natural justice.
But in the wake of a sustained IRA terror campaign on the mainland, government supporters believe the Home Secretary is right to exercise his extensive powers. 2 people have been excluded so far this year. 77 are currently under exclusion orders, mostly in Northern Ireland.
No one wants to do this lightly, but the fact is that we are facing a relentless terrorist threat in this country, and I do believe that these powers are necessary, and I see no reason to suspect that the Home Secretary has used these powers inappropriately in this case.
Today, at the hospital in North London where Mr. Matthews worked in the holidays and recently, a former colleague was happy to speak of his good character.
He seemed to be a hard-working, honest chap. Everyone seemed to like him. He got on well with everyone. He was never late, never sick. Got on with his job.
What the magistrate said yesterday about John, he had a very good character. I think it's just a matter of formality. John has walked innocent, and that's what we wanted.
But now an exclusion order.
In Dublin, Irish opposition MPs called on Albert Reynolds, the Prime Minister, to take steps to have the exclusion order withdrawn. It's now become an international issue, and it also raises the question of whether the Home Secretary's exclusion orders should be the subject of independent scrutiny.
Jane Bennett-Powell, well, I put it to Sir Ivan Lawrence, the Conservative chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee, that deporting someone after no evidence was offered didn't do much for Britain's human rights image.
Well, the trouble is that there is no easy solution to this problem. The exclusion orders are, I think, understood now to be a very important part of the state's armoury against terrorism. We can't prove everything in a court of law because witnesses are too terrified to give evidence, or it may be that a witness is dead, or it may be that an informant's name would have to be released, in which case he would be subject to a death threat himself. And for those reasons, sometimes positive evidence simply isn't available. And although it's perfectly true it's a deprivation of liberty, we sometimes have to sacrifice liberty in order to protect the liberty of the people, because the security of the people is still the highest law.
And Chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee, Sir Ivan Lawrence. Well, joining us now from Westminster is the Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary, Kevin McNamara. Well, Kevin McNamara, there in a sense you have it. You know, the scale of the problem, the terrorism is such that we have to forego a bit of liberty.
No, I don't think that is the problem. That's playing right into the hands of the terrorists. For a start, Ivan Lawrence didn't mention the main fact, which was that the prosecution had said that they had forensic evidence, didn't fall under any of the categories that he mentioned. No forensic evidence was produced. But let us now consider what has happened to this young man. His face has been on every television screen. He's been sent back to an area where there's great communal troubles. He's going to be a marked man in the area where he's been sent to. There's going to be an enormous sense of grievance, not only with him, but with the rest of the community in which he is involved. So what we've sent him back as a marked man for any loyalist organisation, perhaps, that wants to deal with him.
Well, now the government will say...
Well, let me just finish. Yep. At his young age, his prospects now of getting a job, although he's a distinguished graduate, are going to be very, very difficult indeed. Now, in those circumstances, when the government had no evidence whatsoever to put up against the man, it really did look as though it was just in a fit of pique that the Metropolitan Police acted in this particular way.
Well, now, as we've said, the government isn't prepared to discuss this case, but I guess they would say, look, there is a process, there's an appeal process, and he's going to trigger that by appealing. But there's also Lord Colville, whose job it is to check that the Home Secretary doesn't misbehave.
No, with the greatest respect, first and foremost, there's no proper appeal process, because the young man will never know the evidence which is being used against him to justify this particular case. That's the first point. He has no opportunity to rebut what is being said. Secondly, Lord Colville has in fact ceased his job with this regard. His last reports were the last reports that he was doing. But even so, that is not satisfactory. What we have is a young man who's been taken out of this country, sent on internal exile, which even the Russians have got rid of since the communists have disappeared, into another part of the United Kingdom where he's going to be a marked man. That is grossly unfair to him. The crowd could not find any evidence whatsoever. They sought to charge him when he was being questioned with every one of the outrages which had been committed, and for all of them he had a cast-iron alibi. They could produce no evidence, and they treat him in that particular way.
Well, now,
the result of that is it causes grave concern to a great number of people of moderate libertarian views, but more important, it means that the terrorists, in fact, have got another victory. He has become a victim of the IRA,
well, now,
but
Mr.
the terrorists are now in a position of being able to say, it just shows you that they can't prove anything, they move the goalposts.
You won't need me to tell you that when it gets to the dispatch box, the government will say, you've resisted the Prevention of Terrorism Act on these grounds before, and in any case, you now seem prepared to break with the bipartisan view on what should happen to Northern Ireland, and therefore we discount your views.
Well, they're entitled to discount my views as much as they want to, as I discount theirs. They are very, very wrong in the way they deal with this matter, because it creates more problems than it solves, and it gives victories and triumphs and excuses to some of the most evil people in the world to use against us, and it makes it very, very difficult for Britain in the international sphere to claim to be a defender of human rights when we treat our own citizens in such a way.
Kevin McNamara, thank you very much for joining us. The Home Office was under fire over another case today, the sister of Derek Bentley, who was hanged 40 years ago for his part in a policeman's murder, won a landmark victory at the High Court in her campaign for a posthumous pardon. Iris Bentley was told by 3 judges that the former Home Secretary, Kenneth Clarke, had erred in the law when he refused to grant any sort of pardon last October. As Liz Donnelly reports, the ruling is being seen as historic because it's demonstrated that the exercise of the royal prerogative of mercy can be reviewed in court.
For more than 40 years, Derek Bentley's sister Iris has campaigned to get him pardoned, arguing that the death penalty was unjust because her brother, though 19, had a mental age of 11 or 12. Today, she welcomed the judge's decision and talked about her feelings.
Shaky, but I know there's still a long road to go yet. But I'm still determined to go that long road and go the whole hog, and I want Derek's name cleared. Had he been put in prison, he'd have been home and he'd have been living a normal life now.
Lord Justice Watkins, Lord Justice Neil and Mr Justice Tuckey ruled that the former Home Secretary Kenneth Clarke erred in law when he refused to grant a pardon, saying it should be possible to devise some formula which would amount to a clear acknowledgement that an injustice was done. They invite the current Home Secretary to exercise the prerogative of mercy, to give full recognition to the now generally accepted view that this young man should have been reprieved.
It's as near a direction as any court gives to a Home Secretary, and I would certainly expect the new Home Secretary, Michael Howard, to give the conditional pardon.
It was on January the 23rd, 1953, at Wandsworth Prison that Derek Bentley was hanged. Outside the prison, a crowd waited. 19-year-old Bentley had been sentenced to death for the murder of a policeman, even though he was unarmed and under arrest at the time of the killing. The fatal shot was said to have been fired by 16-year-old Chris Craig, who was too young to hang. It was said Bentley had shouted to him, "Let him have it, Chris." Craig was released from prison in 1963 and always maintained this wasn't true.
Not a word came from him. He was just taken away meek and mildly. Bentley wasn't aggressive. He was a flash, but non-aggressive. I don't believe he'd harm a fly.
2 years ago, this film, Let Him Have It, was released, giving what in Craig's view was an exaggerated and glamorised picture of the crime in which he and Bentley were caught by police
as they attempted to burgle a sweet factory in Croydon. The film left the question of innocence or guilt open, but it again led to questions of whether it had been right for Bentley to hang.
Let him have it, Chris!
Last October, Kenneth Clark refused to grant a free pardon to Bentley on the grounds that the jury's verdict was safe. Today he defended his decision, saying he'd followed the precedent that a royal pardon was only given where innocence was established. As Iris Bentley and her daughter posed for the photographers outside the appeal court, experts following the case hailed the decision by the judges that Mr. Clark had erred in law as historic.
This is the first time that the Home Secretary's executive decision not to recommend a pardon has in fact been challenged, and it's particularly interesting because it really relates to the question of whether or not Derek Bentley should have been reprieved rather than whether or not he should have been convicted. But of course, having gone this far, then there are a number of other cases in which this question could be asked. I suppose the one which springs most readily to mind is that of the late James Hanratty, but there are a number of other cases which could be cited, probably going back as far as the Thompson and Bywaters case in 1922.
Iris Bentley now hopes the current Home Secretary Michael Howard will act quickly to implement the appeal court's ruling and grant a pardon, and she hopes he'll take the matter further.
Give Derek a clear his name of murder, because he didn't injure anybody, he didn't hurt anybody, he didn't call out, and he was under arrest for 15 minutes.
If the Home Secretary stops short of this, Bentley supporters say they'll consider taking the matter to